I'm the associate professor of Seoul Women's University, and it's my great honor to be here as a presenter. I'm not a presenter, as the chair. So we have 4 interesting papers, including Professor Bala and Professor Angelina Professor Angelina and Professor Seol and Professor Fujiwara, yeah. Yes. So we will start our session with the presentation of Professor Bala.
Yeah.
Professor Bala, are you ready to present?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning to all of you who are in this part of Asia, and good afternoon to all of you who are on the eastern side of Asia. I'm delighted to present my paper on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on small and medium enterprises in India. Now, it's a common knowledge now that COVID-19 pandemic has caused unprecedented damages to all the countries across the world in varying magnitudes, and India is no exception. So given this, I would like to draw your attention to my descriptive analysis on how this pandemic has affected the SME sector in India. So at the outset, I would like to argue that small and medium enterprises occupy a place of strategic significance in Indian economy because the sector has been consistently contributing to India's exports, India's national income, and total employment generated in the country. In fact, SME sector is the most powerful sector in terms of export contribution, and the second most powerful sector in terms of contribution to employment and GDP. Now, of late, the contribution of SMEs to innovations has also been recognized, though it has not been systematically recorded. But despite all kinds of policy support which have been extended ever since India attained independence, the sector continues to face challenges. Challenges for its emergence, for its sustenance and growth on varied fronts, mainly for accessing finance, accessing markets, and accessing human resources, apart from, of course, upgrading production technologies periodically. But the important issue to note is that the sector has got accustomed to emerge and operate continuously under constraints and challenges of various kinds, till I would say March 2020. But it is since March 2020, the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic, which has actually posed innumerable challenges, caused unprecedented damages to Indian economy, and Indian SME sector is no exception. So that is why I felt that we need to look at how the SME sector has suffered, what are the dimensions, what are the causes, and what policy support has been extended by the government of India and the regional governments, and how are they successful, and what are the policy initiatives that need to be introduced in the immediate future. So it is with that intention that I'm going to make a presentation. Please note, this is a descriptive analysis because we have not been able to get quantitative data on the SME sector. How did it suffer during the COVID-19 pandemic? We still do not have any kind of data. Now, there is a reason for this. If you look at the SME sector in India, it is highly heterogeneous. It is heterogeneous because of its location, because of the number of products it manufactures, because of the size of enterprises, level of technological sophistication, quality and skills of labor, kinds of organization, nature of registration, extent of market penetration, sources of finance obtained, nature of customers. From various angles, if you see, Indian SME sector is highly diversified and heterogeneous. Now, precisely for that reason, we do not have a systematic, uniform, single database on small and medium enterprises in India. Now, such a database will actually help us to understand the change in the size of the sector periodically. Now, such a database is extremely important if we have to understand the performance of the sector more meaningfully, and also it would assume critical significance in times of crisis such as the current COVID-19 pandemic, which is afflicting the entire nation through a wave after wave. In fact, India has experienced so far, fortunately, only 2 waves. Though the third wave was anticipated in August, September, so far the declining trend continues, and we hope that the third wave will not emerge at all. Now, though we do not have adequate data to understand the change that has happened in the SME sector, it is possible to analyze the impact by looking at the supply and demand shocks that have emerged from the COVID-19 crisis, one at the macro level and two at the sector level. And that is what I'm going to do now. Now, if you look at the economic dimensions of its follows for the Indian economy as a whole, supply side effects can be explained in terms of the damages that have occurred due to a complete national lockdown to deal with the first wave, which led to the curtailment or disruption in the supply of goods and services due to 2 important reasons. One, complete stoppage of production activities during the lockdown period, followed by exit and scaling down of a large number of enterprises across the country. This is the first major factor. Second major factor, due to this lockdown and the other subsequent disruptions, disruptions happened locally, regionally, nationally, and globally, which continued even after the lifting of national lockdown in the supply chains of raw materials and intermediate inputs, supply of labor force, availability of capital. And disruption and curtailment happened even in the emergence and operations of new or existing enterprises. In other words, the emergence of new enterprises would have been postponed and the existing enterprises would have curtailed their scale of operations. Now, labor productivity would have suffered because of labor health issues, because of labor payment issues, and because of lockdown, and because of displacement. So for various reasons, labor productivity would have suffered. And even the R&D and technological innovations of existing enterprises would have suffered, and whoever has planned to initiate R&D and technological innovations would have either postponed or would have given up altogether. So this is the supply side dimension of the COVID-19 pandemic at the national level. Now, if you look at the demand side, now an economist always looks at aggregate demand comprising consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, government expenditure, and net exports, that exports minus imports. Now, if you look at consumption expenditure, according to government statistics, consumption expenditure declined by almost 10% in 2021. This is due to various reasons. I have mentioned some of them here, due to closure of non-essential economic activities, limiting shopping hours, job losses, limited movement of consumers, and disruption of family life due to the unfortunate demise of their breadwinners. Now, for all these reasons, private consumption expenditure declined by almost 10%. Now, it is likely to revive in 2021-22 with COVID-19 second wave subsiding and the health crisis being reined in gradually, because the vaccination drive, which was initiated in the early part of this year, has successfully, progressing pretty well all across the country. And I hope that with God's grace, we will not have the third wave, given that the economic recovery that is happening now will gain momentum in the immediate future. Now, because the consumption expenditure has declined, now investment expenditure also has declined. Investment expenditure has declined also because of stoppage of production, wiping out of enterprises, disruption or reduction in the supply of factor inputs, loss or reduced retained surpluses, loss or reduced profits, reduced flow of loanable funds, bleak market prospects. Due to all these reasons, investment expenditure declined by about 11%. And its revival would depend upon the revival of consumption expenditure, among others. And the net exports, as you all would know, that India's participation in the export market is to some extent limited, though it is growing. But then due to reduction in income levels across the globe, disruption and reduction in the global supply chains of multinational corporations, All this caused our exports to decline by almost 5%. Now, its revival largely depends on the recovery of global markets, particularly in the developed world, because majority of India's exports go to the developed world. Now, after looking at the demand and supply dimensions for the country as a whole, now I would like to draw your attention to the supply shocks of the SMEs. Complete stoppage of production due to the national lockdown happened, and due to regional lockdown, that is because of the second wave in 21, and subsequent impact due to a disruption of the supply chain locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally, and mass movement of labor from metros and cities to towns and villages. In fact, India experienced unprecedented labor flow from urban India to rural India. Perhaps not in my lifetime I have seen that kind of labor exodus from urban areas to rural areas. And that happened during the first wave of COVID-19, and partial movement happened during the second wave, and reduced financial flow, particularly to in the informal money market, that would have adversely affected the operations and output of informal or unregistered enterprises. Please note, in the SME sector, unregistered enterprises account for almost 4/5 of the total enterprises, even more than that. So they all would have suffered significantly. As a result, COVID-19 first wave, FW stands for first wave and SW stands for second wave, they would have severely curtailed the output emerging from the SME sector. And as I have told you earlier, the SME sector accounted for about 1/3 of the GDP, and India's GDP declined by 6.2% in 2021. So the impact of COVID-19 second wave is likely to be more devastating, despite the absence of nationwide lockdown and state governments dealing with only partial lockdowns in most affected regions. But during the second wave, the most affected regions actually comprised the developed part of the country, which actually included the National Capital Region, Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore. So therefore, both these waves would have affected SME sector on a considerable scale. Now, coming to the demand shocks, severely curtailed consumer demand would have affected B2C SMEs, and industry demand, curtailed industry demand would have affected B2B SMEs, and curtailed export demand would have affected both B2C SMEs and B2B SMEs. Of course, SMEs in terms of number of exporting enterprises accounted for hardly 1% of the total SMEs in the country. So to that extent, the suffering on the export front for SMEs is likely to be limited. Now that's about the causes. Now let me make an assessment of the impact. The impact primarily I would like to look at from 3 angles. One, in terms of time scale, that short to medium term and long term. 2, in terms of, say, formal and informal or registered and unregistered enterprises. And 3, in terms of locations, that is urban and rural locations. In the short to medium run, SME sector, formal as well as informal enterprises, urban as well as rural locations would have suffered badly due to the lockdowns, which would have prevented production on the one hand and supply of inputs and labor on the other. Now, the exception could be own-account enterprises, because some own-account enterprises are household industries which work within their household premises with their own labor, and I don't think officials would have succeeded in preventing their day-to-day operations. So they would have continued. And when the authorities largely eased lockdown restrictions, many formal enterprises in both urban and rural regions have reopened and started their operations in many instances with a curtailed workforce. So that is the issue. Now, overall, the COVID-19 outbreak and the subsequent national lockdown dealt a considerable blow to the employment sector of the country. And please note, SMEs account for the second largest employment generating sector, and the estimated job losses were close to 11 million in 2020, according to one source. Now, according to CMI, that is Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, it's a private data agency. According to their estimates, unemployment scenario in the country deteriorated sharply since January till July 2021. In other words, the kind of employment scenario which actually declined in 2020 because of the first wave declined further in early part of 2021. Of course, job market has recovered since then, particularly in the last 2 months. In September 2021 alone, jobs increased by 8.5 million. That also would have been contributed by the recovery of the SME sector. But these figures do not cover massive underemployment of labor adopted by firms, because we were told that a good number of SMEs, particularly in urban India, they've started shifting their production processes from labor-intensive to capital-intensive production processes, and they also started employing labor on a part-time basis. All this would have created, actually, would have significantly reduced total consumption expenditure, followed by investment expenditure. Of course, a larger proportion of unregistered informal enterprises in urban area would have wiped out completely, due to the reverse labor migration. This has been noted by the central bank of our country, Reserve Bank of India. Now, this would have, but then this has two important developments. This led to two important developments in rural India. One, a significant chunk of this informal enterprise labor, which went back to the rural area, they joined agriculture, and many of them started cultivating land which were earlier deserted by them. So that is one of the reasons why agriculture was the only sector which registered a positive growth in 2021, apart from public utilities. In fact, agriculture, forestry, and fishing sector was the only sector apart from utilities which recorded positive growth rate of 3.6% at constant prices in 2021. So the lockdown imposed during COVID-19 second wave, that is since April 2021, would have had a similar impact like that of the first wave. Though the second wave emerged as unexpectedly as the first wave, the reimposition of lockdown was anticipated by almost all segments of Indian economy, including SMEs. Now, though the production has been disrupted due to the lockdowns, some of the formal and informal enterprises in urban and rural regions, they would have stored factory inputs. They would have taken care of labor. This is what media reports indicated, to reinitiate production soon after the lifting of the lockdowns. But that would have addressed only the supply side, because the demand side would have continued to suffer for various reasons. I have mentioned some of them here. SME supply would have still suffered due to labor health problems, even after easing of lockdowns, as the proportion of population affected by COVID-19 second wave and its death rates increased considerably in the country, particularly in the better developed states since April 2021. So in addition, the continued constrained demand will act as a major bottleneck for the recovery of the sector. This is because job losses are observed economy-wide. According to Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, India lost more than 7 million jobs in April 2021 alone. Now, this is compounded by freezing of salaries, pay cuts for existing employees, irrespective of size. According to reliable sources, some of the firms went for automation to overcome the problem of labor shortage, thereby giving a blow to employment recovery. This automation picked up not just in metros and cities, even in semi-urban areas. I believe many small and medium enterprise owners, they went for capital-intensive production strategies rather than labor-intensive production strategies to overcome the problem of labor shortage. So due to all these, the central bank of our country, that is Reserve Bank of India, observed that the second wave hit demand more than supply. Now, added to all these, the negligible number of export enterprises would not have recovered, rather continue to suffer subsequent to the easing of lockdowns after May 2020 till July 2021 due to inadequate export demand. So overall, the brunt of the lockdowns, national or regional, first wave or second wave, they would have been significantly borne by formal or registered SMEs and informal and unregistered SMEs, which are primarily confined to metros and tier 1 cities. The SMEs located in towns and villages will bear the brunt additional due to a decline in informal finance availability. But some of the household industries, we call them as own account enterprises, now which are primarily meant for meeting local demand by making use of local resources and skills, might have survived and would continue to survive. And some self-financed ones might have escaped the brunt altogether, particularly in rural India. So that is another dimension which one need to look at, one need to understand. But due to depressed demand conditions, even their lot would not have changed for any better. Perhaps the status quo would have continued. So the rehabilitation packages introduced by some of the state governments in this time of crisis are welcome, as it would provide the much needed immediate relief to SMEs, including unorganized workers. Now, let me briefly bring your attention to the long-run impact. Now, that would depend upon two factors. First one, how long the COVID-19 pandemic will continue to haunt the economy, and how soon the country will be able to rein in the health crisis through extensive vaccinations of its widely spread population, and as a result, how successful the country will be in preventing the emergence of a third wave. Now, so far, I personally feel our country has successfully prevented the emergence of a third wave. And as I have told you earlier, the second wave is still in the declining mode. So that is why some experts have already started indicating that third wave is unlikely to emerge in the near future. Now, secondly, how effectively the government would address the concerns of the SME sector through monetary and fiscal policy initiatives. During the first wave, Government of India gave a series of relief measures to the SME sector. And during the second wave, the central bank of the country and regional governments provided some amount of relief measures to SMEs. So if these measures have proved beneficial to some extent, that would give a fillip to the recovery of the SME sector in the country. Now, I will make some policy recommendations in this context. The first thing that I would like to recommend to the Government of India is we have a nationwide network of district industry centers, which has largely become ineffective. And that is why I would strongly urge the government to revive the nationwide network of devices, make them to prepare a district-wise economic health status of SMEs, and also see that relief packages are distributed through these district industry centers. And these district industry centers must involve small finance banks, along with Small Industries Development Bank of India, NABARD, state financial corporations, etc. And the revival package should involve collateral-free concessional finance, employment criteria-based subsidy, preferential access to utilities, training of local labor for upgradation skills, enabling e-marketing, and forging networks among micro enterprises for overcoming diseconomies of scale, for accessing larger external markets, among others. So there's an urgent need to expand the network of small finance banks. Small finance banks were introduced in 2014 mainly to promote non-agricultural informal enterprises across the country, but they have predominantly come up in better developed states like Karnataka, Maharashtra, New Delhi, and other places, whereas they have very less penetration in rural India. So I would strongly urge the government, see that new branches in rural India emerge only in the form of small finance banks for promoting non-farm economic activities. I would also suggest the government to establish rural business incubation centers with the support from District Industry Center, Small Industries Development Bank of India, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, and state financial corporations to encourage local talent, local ideation, and local resource utilization for generating local startups. So with that, I will sum up my paper presentation. The COVID-19 first wave and the national lockdown implemented to contain it during March-May 2020 gave an unprecedented blow to the vibrant SME sector as much as to the whole economy through supply and demand side shocks. The COVID-19 second wave would have made a devastating impact on the SME sector in India, which has become fragile due to the onslaught of COVID-19 first wave. Now, the fiscal and monetary stimulus introduced by the national and regional governments was very appropriate and justified. However, they would have provided only the much needed short-term succor, but not beyond. Now, a revitalized district industry center network with the help of small finance banks, Small Industries Development Bank of India, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, and small state financial corporations can play a decisive role in the revival of SME sector across the country. The establishment of rural business incubators is an equally appropriate step to strengthen and promote entrepreneurship at the grassroots level. Now, together, it would facilitate the economic rejuvenation of Indian economy in the immediate future through the revitalized small and medium sector in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bala. I think it was very interesting and very important presentation in this area, in this time, because all of the countries in the earth and we would be suffered by the pandemic of the COVID-19 for 2 years. Maybe, I'm not sure if if the pandemic will be will be also in next years. I'm not sure, but I don't think it would be positive until now, because I mean that pandemic status will be how can I say, still the pandemic will be like will be with us in next years. So,
Are you talking about the recovery time for the sector as a whole?
no. It doesn't mean just my feeling about the COVID-19. Okay. Now it's a time of the second presentation of Professor Angelina. Professor Angelina, are you okay? Are you ready?
Yes, I'm here. Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
I can hear.
Okay, I will share my screen.
Yes.
So thank you very much. So I'm actually Professor Dr. Angelina Yi. I actually now work with the university, which is called the Asia Pacific University of Innovation and Technology. So today I'll be sharing in terms of the incubation center that the university has, from our experience, and all the different types of programs, and how important is the incubation and startups to Malaysia. And especially we are looking in terms of times of pandemic, and from a policy perspective, how the country, Malaysia, has actually pushed forward and also encourages in terms of the startup in Malaysia, despite pandemic. Okay, so let's go for a quick overview. So have a quick look at the ASEAN landscape. So according to the Global Entrepreneurship Index, we look at 2018 and 2019. The 2020 was not released yet. So between these two particular years, we see a huge increase, in the country, especially Indonesia, followed by Thailand and Malaysia. Even despite among the 6 different ASEAN countries, Singapore ranked the highest in the Global Entrepreneurship Index. However, you can see that they have maintained their position and their ranking throughout the 2 years. Interestingly, if you start to see how Indonesia and Malaysia has actually comes out and has a huge increase in the ranking over the 2 years. So we have actually looked into one of the past journal, scholar studies. It has actually looked into the different Indonesian universities who actually has been producing startup founders for Indonesia. So ITB, which is the Institute Technology Bandung, has actually been ranked the first and followed by Bina Nusantara University of Indonesia, Taruma Negara University, and Pelita Harapan University. So after this, I will look at the how the Asia Pacific universities, in terms of our various programs that we have actually conducted, how we have some similarities. We didn't actually refer to ITB, but we found some similarities in terms of some of the directions, in terms of how we build our ecosystems of the entrepreneurship in the in my university. Okay, so next we will look at the types of incubator, just to give us a very broad overview. So the types of incubator comes from various different function and also purpose, and also the types and the source of funding. So university incubators has been see a rise, in the university incubators, and most of this main function is to look into commercializing the research, or even to look at developing the student entrepreneurship culture in terms of startup. So university, there are few universities, who finds that they have played an important role in encompassing or in cultivating the entrepreneurship spirit, in the students. So despite that, there are some of the books or some of the authors, who actually mentioned that there are many good entrepreneurs who has not actually graduated, or not been cultivated by the university. However, when you look into the report from Nesta in India, he actually mentioned specifically that, university plays an important role in building and developing replicative entrepreneurs. Even in GI, the Global Entrepreneurship Index reports also mention similarly as well. So university does play an important role in the new wave of the startup for the country. And of course, you also have the other incubators, which are commercial or business funded. You have investor-led accelerators, which are also functions like incubators, where they have all the different venture capitalists and investors centric as a purpose of the interest. And you also have those incubators with primarily focused on social impact or social enterprises, and of course the online platform as well. So just to have a quick look at the three different major differences in terms of the incubators from the business.
I'm sorry, Prof. Just want to interrupt because I still see
Yes.
your slide on the first slide.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it's good that you have to share with me. Okay.
Okay.
I think it's better if I go this way.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. No worries. Okay.
Can't see a
so
slide.
yeah. Thanks for telling me that so that I know. Are you able to see
Okay,
now
no,
the
it's
business
on.
social?
Yes,
Okay.
you can
All right.
see the presentation.
All right. Better now? Okay. That's why sometimes the presentation hang. All right. So this is where when we look at the business incubators, they are there to actually support all the different business goals where the company, the startups are usually measured by the amount of revenue that they actually bring, the growth of the startups, and they actually offers, the office space, business services, coaching, funding, and access into networks. So this is where it is very much targeted to assist the startups, to scale up and goes into the market. Social incubators actually support all the social enterprises, which actually look at improving their social impact from the education all the way up to solving the community problems itself. So you can start to see that they have to struggle, and they also need to be aware that they need to balance the profit and also impact as part of their social enterprise purpose and objectives. We look at university incubators. The role of the university incubators is to plant the seeds of entrepreneurship in our students, whether it is, most of our students that we are aware that they might not go and start up their own startup companies. However, we also want them to have the entrepreneurial, innovative, and creative mindset when they actually are in the workplace in the future. So if we plant the seeds, the university might not actually harvest, or we might not even flourish in our time with us. So, however, planting of the seeds of entrepreneurship is very important. So this is where we could develop the attitudes, the aspiration, and the ability of students, by allowing them to actually have a trial and error dynamic within the university, which is always backed by a phrase that you fail cheap and you fail fast as a university. So these are some of the success factors, from the incubation center, which is actually starts with the point of there's a need, to actually develop all the programs, the various programs to support the entrepreneurships, the activities, up to the point that when you actually have your own angel investor or access into venture capitalists, and in terms of having a proper measures to measure the success, of the incubation center by looking at various, the factors that's actually measures that's actually named here. At the same time, they need to actually provide all the different facilities, networking, mentors, and also have the physical space where they allow the access of the startups into the university facilities and the other resources as well. So that is why entrepreneurship education has become more essential and important, as the environment evolve as well. So this is where the firm commitment from the university management and the staff are very critical to ensure the success of some of this entrepreneurship education. So this is where we start to see there are some of the programs, universities are enhancing or allowing and kind of like made it compulsory to a certain extent for the students to actually undertake their entrepreneurship programs and modules. So this is where, I would like to share with you in terms of a case study in terms of Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation, or in short, APU. So in APU, we actually has the enterprise team. There's a team of us, who actually works in terms of building up the entrepreneurial and enterprising activities within the university. The university have a very nice campus, as you can see. So I hope you can come and visit us. So I want to share that in the policy in Malaysia, the Ministry of the Higher Education has actually encourages, or they have actually released a policy last year, which is called the Entrepreneurship Integrated Education. So it has actually spells out the important and the various segments of the entrepreneurship education in terms of delivery and up to incorporating the ecosystem and culture within the university. So at the same time, under the separate ministry, so this is under another ministry in Malaysia, Ministry of Entrepreneurship, and they also have released, the National Entrepreneurship Policy, which also look into encouraging the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Malaysia as a whole. So by putting in the various governmental institutions to look at all the different addressing different barriers and challenges that the startups has actually faced, and that could, and hopefully that it will actually allow the startup to break through. So this is where from funding to policies to all the different skills development support systems are being put into place. So this is just to actually shows you how the two different policies are being mapped, and in terms of the goals of the different policy, and is basically to show us that how important, that entrepreneurship and startups, to Malaysia as a country. So here, basically, we have also take the liberty. This is actually have to acknowledge that this source, this slides was done by my colleague, which is the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research and Innovation, Prof. Vinesh himself. So we actually will be looking at how we could actually implement some of these programs, that we actually have, that we will be addressing some of this ecosystem that map against the entrepreneurship integrated curriculum itself. So these are some of the challenges, that has been bring up or been addressed or been spelled out in the entrepreneurship, national policy, and how to show you how we, in APU has actually addressed, all these challenges by putting in our programs, various programs, putting in our curriculums, putting in all the different training, guest speaker series, and then how we have incorporated, all the teaching and learning, and also having the physical incubation site, up and coming, to actually accommodate, and build this ecosystem. So we also have the council, and also the space. So this is basically the space, that we will be looking at renovating in the next couple of few months. So hopefully, if you come and visit me in 2022, when the borders open, then you could actually visit the incubation center. So this particular and the next few slides, are being developed by one of my colleagues, from the School of Design. Yeah. So this is actually to give you a feel of how our physical incubation center would probably looks like, and then how it could actually cater, for a different needs of a different groups of people as they will be housed in our incubation center. So our incubation center will be called the APU Startup Sandbox Incubation Center Hub. All right. So we have various, activities that we could actually run and organize within the university itself. So here I picked up one of the proposed or success, of the an entrepreneurship university, which is Institute of Technology Bandung. So this is one of the studies that's been conducted on the case study basis. So I've also put in, how the APU also have the similar in terms of what the activities that we have actually conducted or will be conducting in the next couple of months, and how we actually bring them together. And we will, of course, we will also hope to see, the success of our own very own incubation center. So this is where when we start to look at the establishments, of a physical space, which we call it in short, APU Startup Sandbox Incubation Center. We call it the ASBX, just for a short form. And then we also have the entire blueprint, which is actually spell out the directions of how the enterprising activities has been a priority, in one of the, as one of our pillar that we want to actually work on as well. Then we also look at all the different entrepreneurship programs, which we will be imparting and running. We actually have done 1 or 2 rounds of the pilot, and at the same time now we are actually enhancing, the entrepreneurship programs, so that we will be able to to offer it to our students. So the curriculum itself will be a core modules compulsory to be taken by students across 10 different programs from certificate, diploma up to degree level. And bearing in mind, these students come from different background. They could be engineering, they could be technology, computer science, and they could even be design, or even business school, management school, and that is where you will start to see all these different students from different disciplines will be taking the entrepreneurship curriculum itself, which is a module to be taught. And at the same time, we also run some independent programs, for our students, which is including like talks, that we actually expose them. And we will also be running the 3 different other programs, which is like the boot camp, the accelerator program, and we will want to actually put them through some of these stress tests so that they will be able to see whether their idea, their startups, whether is it going to be a viable for them, when they are with us in their 3 years journey when they are with the university. So this is where we call them the startup weekends and accelerator program. So this is also helps to enhance, some of the students in terms of their knowledge, in terms of the being mentored by experts, which are academic and also industry mentors. So we also now start to build out our very own venture capital angel investors ring of the groups, to support the some of our startups. So we will actually allowing the universities, or even we might be thinking because we have not come to this juncture. We are quite new also in about less than a year. So we'll be looking at building some friends, trust funds, our alumni who wants to contribute back, or they will want to actually pick up some of the investment as a business capital support to some of our student startups. So having a strong partnership with other community. So this is where we start to discuss with a couple of university across the world in different regions, one or each at least for a different country, to look into an incubation hub cartel, which we actually have a group of incubation centers that could work together for a mutual interest and mutual benefits. So alumni are important for us. They are now coming back to be our mentors to actually provide, the guidance for our students. And at the same time, we also engage with the businesses. So another proud thing to say about APU is we actually have a team, of our academic staff, academic colleagues, which actually has a business background or even business acumen. So the team, the core team who are building up this particular enterprise at EPU are very, very good, and they have very vast knowledge, on the business, and they are the best to actually to be mentor to our students. So we also provide our mentors. This is where it comes from the pool of our academic and also industry mentors. And we also have an entrepreneurship club, which we call it the E-Club. The E-Club will help to run some of these entrepreneurship activities as part of extracurricular activity. So we still will be looking at, running some boot camp competitions, ideation competition. We'll probably look at some of the activities, to stimulate, the entrepreneurship in Malaysia. But of course, the last but not least, which is not in this list, that I would like to add on as well, collaborations and having the support from the ministries and different governmental industry agencies is also important. For example, Magic actually looks into the supporting of the social enterprise. So we could have students, which are interested to look at startups, especially in the social impact as a social enterprise. We could actually direct them, to get support from Magic. And Technology Park Malaysia, this is where the university is being housed, right? The universities is being housed, we are actually physically situated in the Technology Park Malaysia. And Technology Park Malaysia is a business incubator that incubate all these startups for Malaysia as well. And we also have the MPC, the Malaysian Productivity Council, which has been newly set up to assist the startups and small and medium-sized company in terms of regulatory barriers and to address some of these regulatory issues. At the same time, we also have the other agencies like MDEC, which looks into digital startups. We look at, we have the SME Corp, who are also encourages, the startups and SMEs, and many, many others as well. So this is why, as a nutshell, if you look into Malaysia, from the policy perspective, we have actually enhanced the importance, of the policy. Just to sum up, the importance of the policy and how the policy has cascaded downward to various ministries and agencies to actually pick up all the different roles, that they have to actually support the startup ecosystem in Malaysia as a country as a whole. And in Asia Pacific University, we also will be also developing the entrepreneurship ecosystem to actually support the startups in our university. So this is where we will look into the, this is where my presentations, and the sharing as well. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you
very much, Professor Angelina. And as mentioned before, we will have a discussion time after the last presentation. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Here's our third presentation. Professor Sung-Soo of Korea. So, Professor Seol, are you okay? Are you ready to present?
Hello, everyone. I'm Professor from Hannam University. Actually, I was retired 2 years ago. Today, the first author was vaccinated. So I will present this presentation on behalf of the first author. Our topic is on the high growth startups. This is the total content, and this is the general introductions. Everybody wants to know why company grows so rapidly, but there are many difficulties in data gathering. So there are many cross-sectional analyses at a point of time, or case studies for few companies. So aren't there any answers for the long-term growth patterns of successful startups? Especially growth of startups regarded different from company growths. Then how about the long-term growth patterns for successful startups? This is our focus. This is the general interest, the existing interest on company growth. Jovanovich's law, Zebra's law, was some point by Moderators. This is our research questions, new research questions plus old questions. I shall show you the exact purpose of this study a little later. This is the existing studies on what is high growth. Some studies focused on sales growth. Some studies also focused on employment growth. Based on employment growth, they define the high growth company. Some studies defines growth rate of sales and employment, both. But most cases uses 20% growth over 3 years. This is the OECD definition. So we will accept these definitions. 20%, over 20% growth over 3 years in sales revenue. That is our definition of high growth company. But there are a slight difference between 3-year average growth rate, we simply call it CAGR, versus every year growth. This type, we use the latter one, 25, 20, 30%. Every year's history of more than 20% is our definition of high growth. This is the existing research. All the texts are Jovanovich's law. There are many studies about Jovanovich's law. Also, many studies on Zebra's law. Also, Aldrich pointed out another factors. In Korea, there are very famous research on company growth. STEPI is Science and Technology Palace Institute that's done research on this project. Among these projects, they deal with a small part about the high growth companies. But they use a little different concept, different definitions, and different data. Another research are found on Gazelle companies. Gazelle, the concept of Gazelle was pointed by Birch and Madoff in 1994. Also, there are studies about the transition of the companies, small to medium, medium to large. In some cases, the composite style, large to medium, medium to small. Yep. Also, the related states, the high growth determinant. What is the determinant for high growth? Aldrich says size, age, industrial structure, entrepreneurial characteristics, locations. Some studies are on Zebra's law, Jovanovich's law. Some says GDP growth is one of the determinant of high growth. Some says external and internal power makes the high growth. Some says R&D is very important. And also there are many studies about high growth of employment, but the employment studies are out of our scopes. So we are focused on the high growth of sales revenue. Our research purpose is several. The biggest one is what is the growth, the long-term growth patterns of successful startups. Successful startups means the Gazelle company. Simply speaking, over 20% growth every year in last 3 years. Korean government announces every year the Gazelle company. So we use that, the company, only company data. The second two is the testing of hypotheses. The first one is the Jovanovich's law. Second one is the Zebra's law, and also the role of R&D, and also the internal profit. Internal profit is the result or the cause. In this paper, we'd like to highlight the role of cause, not the result. Much profit. We think much profit makes high growth. So we'll put this variable as an input. Yeah. Also, we'll check industry difference, regional or locational difference, export or not. We think a positive for growth. We'll check the hypothesis. This is the data. Korean government announces the Gazelle company. Gazelle companies are defined sales revenue with over 100 billion won and 3-year CAGR over 20% sales growth. So based on this company's name, we collect detailed data from these databases. Simply speaking, our data set is 252 companies from 2006 to 2020. 15 years data of 252 companies. This is the data from the company data, not detailed financial data. We use this. And the first one, the basic statistics is like this. This is the establishment period before 1970s, 210, like this. Listed in public company is this before 1970s, they need 29 years for public listing. This means 210th period company need only 7 years. This means the company's history is more newer than shorter year for listings. This is the difference between the establishment period and by industry. This is the location by types, B2B, business to business, business to business, or consumer, business to consumer, business to government. This is the first result of our analysis. How long do they record the high growth? In our data, gazelles for 5 years means over 20% growth for 7 years. It's only 0.8%. Only two companies recorded 7-year consecutive more than 20% growth. Gazelle 4 years means the 6 years growth, high growth is 3.6, only 3.6%. Most companies, about 70% of gazelle companies. Gazelle companies is the successful company, successful startups, defined by government, but they record 70% of them record only 3-year high growth. This is our first result. The second is the growth patterns. We classify 5 patterns. Here, I show you the 4 patterns. The growth patterns, growth during 15 years. Some cases, growth, decrease, growth. This is the second type. Third type is growth and decrease, growth and decrease. And fourth type, growth and instability. This is our finding of 4 patterns. To check the hypothesis, this is the model. This time, our presentation time is very short, so I'll skip the models. This is the result of hypothesis. The older, the lower the growth rate, Jovanovic's law in process. But until now, it's negative. Or second one, the zebra's law is also negative. But we'll show you in printed papers in the detailed information. The third one, R&D minus 1. R&D with time lag of 1 year is a positive factor for growth. No. we can't find that proof. The fourth one, the size of internal profit is the positive cause for growth. Yes. Regional or location role or export role is in process. This is our study result. We'll show the detailed information in the printed version in a very short time. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Professor Seol. And we have the last presenter and after now, yeah, Professor Fujiwara.
Yes.
Are you okay? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you ready to present your
Okay.
paper?
Thanks so much. Yeah. Just a minute. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much for introductions. Because this session is a real international session, and also before my orders are so famous professor, all famous professors are mates. So I was some frightened for my orders. My topic is would be biotech startup are investment in financial crisis related on present times. Okay, this is just my outlines. And before starting my presentation, I will ask you, okay, who is this one? Who is this one? How about Professor Subrahmanya? Who is this one?
Yeah, our I forgot his name. Apple.
Jobs.
Yeah, Stephen Jobs of Apple. How about next one? Steve Jobs is same.
Elon Musk.
Huh?
Elon Musk, right?
Elon Musk of the Tesla. And how about this one?
He is the Facebook founder, right?
Yes, yes.
Zuckerberg.
Okay, thanks so much. Next is a little difficult. How about this one?
One of them is Honda, if I'm right.
Yes, yes. This is Soichiro Honda of the Honda. How about this one?
Bonosuke?
Yes, Konosuke Matsushita of the Panasonic.
Yes. The third one?
Yes.
I forgot. I forgot his name.
This is a co-founder of the Sony and just a minute. Just a minute. Morita, Akio Morita.
Akio Morita.
Yes, Akio Morita. This is a co-founder of the Sony. So next is a new generation of the this Japanese entrepreneur. Do you know this person?
No.
Okay. This is Mr. Mitsuru Izumo of the Yugurina. This is a company of just bio or jet fuel. How about this second person? No.
No.
This is just Kichiro or just Kubota of the peptide drinks. These biotech startup companies. How about this one? Sorry. This is Mr. Hidekazu of Sekiyama of the Spiber. Spiber is just artificial and a suite of the just a spider. Spider is compared is light and also strong compared to the irons steel. Okay, this company is a spin-off from Keio universities, and these two are spin-off from Tokyo universities, University of Tokyo. Okay, this is just Japanese infrastructures. This is Hokkaido to Okinawa, and north and south. This is a classical manufacturing. So this is add value. Okay, The center is just IT prefecture's transport equipment. The second is this inside IT prefectures. This peak is just on Toyota City's transportation equipments. Okay, so almost on just annually 40 or 6% in this IT prefecture is just cover only the Toyota cities. So this moment is so this figure is showing just centration of the manufacturing in Japan, just in Toyota cities. Next is this is inside IT prefectures, okay, and this is employment transit in between the two big main industries after 1950 to 2010, okay, and on this. This blue line is showing just on textile. Okay, the peak was 1961. After that, declining. On their hands, sorry. This red line is showing just an automobile. Okay, and on just a close point is on just 1969. So because about 30 years ago. There are two peaks. One is Tokyo's Tokyo Metropolitan printing, okay, as just manufacturing. The second is neighbors Kanagawa Prefecture's IT industries, but both industries are shut down at the moment. Compete with Korea or just Taiwan or US or so. Okay, at the moment only the we are. Japanese manufacturing only just depend on the automobile industry of the Toyota. Okay, so this is not so good for us. So this is just a start, okay, and especially I think development on biopharmaceutical. Maybe the biotech startup is very important to make bridge between just on basic research universities and also the development. Or just manufacturing as a big pharma. But at the moment, of course, startup is very important. Better compared to the big pharma in cost, speed, and also flexibility. But only they have some disadvantage. That is just on resources. So especially I'm interested in the value of the death, initial. Early stage of the negative profit periods. So especially it takes 12 years from the compound at laboratory into the just drug on the market. It takes 12 years, and it costs about and 300,000 to just 1 million US dollars for the cost. And success is very rare, about 1 to 300,000, very rare success rate. So at times, especially I'm interested in this variables. And next is, my research question is 3, okay? Why can so many biotech startups survive even the exit in the red ink? Second, okay, especially how could such companies survive in 2008 financial crisis times? And third, and at Pareto distribution of the achievement, how is our investment or success company different from other and the counterparts? Okay. So this is my definition of the keywords. A biotech strategy defines as a portfolio real option regarding investment opportunity of the commercialization of life science idea with an asset. This is just a terminology from the financial engineering, okay, related real options. This time I use the data Edgar of the US SEC, and especially this time I classify the 3 groups. One is a growing firms between 2008 and 2017, okay? At 2 time points. if the company's stock prices increase, and inside, okay, very successful company and also not so successful companies, I separate star company and non-star companies, okay, inside a growing group. Secondly, decline group, okay, and this stock price is declining between the 2 time points. Also, inside this group, I separate star and also non-star range between the growing and declining. This company is grouping as a random group, okay. Also, inside these 32 companies, I just pick up the 6 star companies, non-star or star companies, okay, success company or not success companies. Star company is just this is just a good performer in each group. So in this type, the methodology is one is the year option analysis to evaluate potential of the even the deficit companies. Okay, and next is just a Bayesian MCMC analysis to just get separate a good company from a non-star company by applies the statistical analysis. This is a basic theory, okay? My assumption is just based on this model. That's a Black-Scholes matter model. This is not. I'm not interested in just a financial asset, but a real asset in this type. Especially, I'm just interested in just the potential of the technologies of the biotech startup. So usually, and Steve Myers of MIT just defines as equity is just a real options because applies this equation. Okay. Asset minus debt equal equities. So equity conserves just call option in just this just BS, okay? This BS. But I just this is my original idea, okay? That is a cash and cash equivalent minus a loss or zero is just a R&D expense investment. This is just my definition of in these times my real option analysis in this for my analysis. Next is I just classify 3 groups because I use this data, okay? This is just a growing company data. Topic is Celgene. Okay. Next is just a decline group. Top is ISMET. Third is just a random group. Top is media genetics in just Utah state. So I just pick up the 3 companies in just each group. Okay, topic 1 is and on this and a purple is just purple is just a general NASDAQ biotech index is this purple. Okay, so black is just Incient. No, Celgene company. Celgene company is came here. Okay, this Celgene. And is showing that's a decline companies. That is came from this one, Insmed. And the next is on this yellow line is showing Mediat. This is just on Salt Lake. Okay, this is located in Salt Lake, US. So, sorry. Okay. The next is just this is just a preliminary analysis of the this data. Okay. So vertical is showing just R&D expense. Okay, and on this 2017 analysis, horizontal, this vertical, so vertical is net incomes, and the horizontal is R&D investment. In these times, just each color is classified. Blue is just a successful company, growing companies. Okay, 2017. And decline is this one, just brown. And random is just on this color. Okay. Compared to the next one, okay, this is 2008 in the financial crisis times. Okay, more shrink. Okay. This is just expert. Sorry. Okay. This is just on 2017, but before that, this three group more concentrated on this situation is. Okay. So this next figure is showing just R&D expense and also net income of the growing companies. In this type is just on two different time points. So this blue line is showing just 2008, okay, in growing company, a growing group. And this brown is showing the 2017. So trend of the growing companies is a shift, okay? Slope is a shift. In financial times, financial crash times, the slope is a much steeper. Compared to present times, 2017. Okay, so they matures. Total trend is matures. Next is on this decline group, also classifies two groups. Okay, 2008 and 2017. Okay, so in the this is just on financial crash time 2008, but in later, okay, no, before or this is 2008, okay, okay, sorry. Okay. There in the financial crimes decline companies, the damage was much bigger. But their trend is different, okay? Because and on this the slope is much steeper in just 2008. That means is okay in financial 2008 decline group damage was much bigger compared to 2017. Next is just a mid-range type of the group is a random group. This blue is 2008. This brown is 2017. Sorry, this rack. Okay, so this is just a mid-range. But even so, in 2008, their decline slope was much steeper. Next is just a comparison, okay? And because this horizontal axis is showing the total stockholder equity, positive and negative. Usually the negative stockholder equity means just a failure, bankruptcy, but sometimes they can survive. Very exceptional case, okay? But this vertical is showing the cash equivalent. So right-hand side is very easy to understand, but this left-hand side are too difficult to understand. But even if their equity is negative, they have some cash on hand to prepare R&D investment. So this is just either small, very sorry. Just I want just a shift of their relationship. For example, look at here, okay? This is a mistake, okay? This is 2017 R&D. This is 2017 cash equivalents. If so, in 2017, we can classify. We can classify. Okay. The blue color are also or just on yellow color. We can clearly separate two groups. So I just defined this group is a star group in this star subgroup of in this is a growing group. Okay, clearly we can separate from this non-star group. But more before times, okay, 2008 R&D and also 2008 cash equivalents, okay, there's a more mixture. Okay, so or maybe we can just return back from present type achievement to focus of this friendship times the situation. Maybe backwardly we can just get some information of the success or non-success companies in the future. Next is this decline group. Okay, so this is on just 2017 the R&D investment and 2017 cash equivalents. So we can also make separate this star group, this non-star group in just open times. On the other hand, this 2008, okay, both group are mixture. Okay, so we won't make separate even in these situations. How can focus or separate the future success or future non-success companies in this time point? Next is just a random group. Okay, 2017 situation. We can make separate. Okay, this non-success and also this star group and non-star group. But 2008 both group are mixture here. So in this session, I just applied the Bayesian emission analysis by using these questions. Okay. So this result is left is just 2008. Right hand side is just 2017. Okay. Especially, I just classified. I'm just interested in just on this intercept, and this is the slope between. Input is an investment, and output is just cash and cash equivalent. Okay, in this simple linear regression analysis between both variables. So, especially look at here on this mean value. Okay, here. This is an interest plot. This is just a result of the 2017. Of course, intercept is also important because this is some cost for entering into these edges. B1 is just a growing groups star subgroup. Okay, B2 is just in growing groups non-star subgroup is on 2. Okay, both companies are on just slope. Compared to this one, okay, so star groups slope is much bigger compared to this non-star group. So just plain times, okay, we make clearly the slope of the star and non-star groups R&D productivity. Next is just on same group is 2008 situation. Okay, this also slope star and non-star groups each slope of the R&D productivities. So this slope is much bigger compared to this one. Okay, plain times. In case of the just in time of 2008 first classic times. Okay, growing groups the star subgroup R&D productivity was very high, okay, compared to this non-star group. This is just a symptom of the future success companies. maybe. Of course, we have to consider some just noising effect also. Even so, maybe we can make separate, or we can forecast the future success company, maybe. Next, the same, okay. This is just also some result of analysis, okay, slope, intercept and slope. So independent variable is just R&D investment, and dependent variable is just cash and cash equivalents. Okay. So this case, 2017. Okay. So especially slope. In this situation, is intercept is a positive. Okay. But in this case, slope is okay. Even the declining group, star group, even star groups, slope was negative, okay. Negative R&D productivity. Okay, so and also this slope is a much sorry. So this slope is a much steeper compared to non-star group. Very strange. Next is just 2008, okay, a decline group. So compared to this one, okay, just 2008. The slope is, and this is a minus, okay, plus. This is plus and also plus. So star group of the decline case, the slope is compared to a bigger, okay, non-star group, but the prime times. The star groups and the slope was negative, and also much a big negative slope compared to the non-star group. This is just a random situation, okay, same. Especially 17, the slope is okay, and star group, the slope is bigger compared to non-star group. This is 2008, okay, and this slope is bigger compared to non-star group. And this is just a summarize information of the growing company's parameter. Especially this is just growing companies and slope. Okay, 2008, and the star groups, the slope was very high. Okay, another group. On the other hand, their intercept was negative because this is this showing a sunk cost to enter into the investment. This is a decline group. Okay, this is very strange. Okay, at present times, and on star groups, the slope was a negative, a big absolute value of the negative. But 2008, okay, and on this slope, 2008, okay, is the star group was sometimes they had a positive slope value. This is a random group, just a middle range. Okay. So this is just a conclusion, a remark, and maybe I think my study confirmed this cash and cash equivalent is very important function as a call option to support an investment, even in negative profit. Okay. In just financial crisis times. And these times, I just, we can make separate success and non-success players. And stock price performance. And especially in the success group, there is some strong connection between the R&D expense and cash equivalents, especially at the financial crisis times. So maybe the Bayesian MC analysis can apply to get some symptom signal from the noisy situation. Make separate a future success or non-success company before even the current times, okay? Even in financial crisis times, we can sometimes, in sometimes degree, we can focus on the future success or no success. Of course, there are some limit. Okay, thanks so much for your quiet debate. Left side is just Miyoku Buddhist stature. Buddhism is also related to India, not only also Korean. Okay, this is a Japanese stature, same group. Right side is a Korean stature. Okay, thanks so much for just you are just and listening. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And we finished our sessions, every presentation, and it's time for us to have a discussion with the presented papers, and we have 4 papers. Do you have any questions or the discussions for each paper on the floor? Yeah, Professor Bala.
Yeah, I have one question to Professor Angelina E. I would like to know whether they have gained any experience in terms of technology commercialization.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Bala. Can you hear me? Yeah. For APU, we are actually initially a teaching university, and now we are still teaching university. So we are definitely looking at technology commercialization. Yes, we have a couple. Because I'm new, I couldn't quote what a few to actually let you know. But the university has a very advanced technology lab, which is including the AR, the VR, robotic, IoTs, and they are well known for all the various competition that they have won. Even recently, just last week, there is one competition that they swiped the whole number 1, number 2, number 3 prize. So this university is known for the technology. Yes, we have a few, not a lot to shout about, but with me around, I'll be helping them to look at more. Thank you.
Yeah, I have another question based on the answer that you have given now. I hope you don't mind. Yeah. See,
no worries.
If you have some experience with respect to technology commercialization, I would like to know, is it possible to define technology commercialization process as you have observed? I'm asking this question because across the world, including the US, commercialization of innovations that have emerged within the university is the biggest challenge for academicians or for the universities. Let me correct myself, for universities, because in general, academicians are happy in doing their research and obtaining patents. So in much of the research in academics ends with obtaining patents. So taking it forward towards patent commercialization has remained rather the biggest challenge across the world. So so that is why I'm curious to know whether we have any lesson to, because your country is, of course, is a very progressive country, doing pretty well economically, so emerging economy. So I would like to know whether any experience that you have which you can share. Technology commercialization, because challenges are many, not that easy. So is there anything innovative to learn from? That's what I'm asking.
Okay, can I share with you in terms of some of our national case studies? So for Malaysia, we know that we might not be like US, we might not be like Silicon Valley, but at the same time, the country has put in various agencies, which is like MTDC or MDEC, the technology, now they call it the technology agency, and look into digitizations for the country. And we also want to see more of such technologies are being started up. It is not an easy pathway. Not many venture capitalists in Malaysia, especially, not many angel investors, but in the recent 3 to 5 years, I have seen quite a number of venture capitalists that I have not heard of or seen of in the last 10 years. You start to see couple of millionaires comes together and starting to invest in different startups. And even myself with a friend, I have actually attended a couple just for the interest. Yeah, so I would say not easy, few cases, but it is still a long way for us, especially university.
Okay. Professor Lee, if you permit me, I want to ask one question to Professor Seol and one question to Professor Fujiwara, if you permit.
Why not? It's
Yes.
my pleasure.
Yeah. Professor Seol, see, your study is again pretty interesting, like the other two presentations of Professor Angelina and Professor Fujiwara. I have just one observation, which also leads to a question. You have studied that export actually did not make a big difference for explaining the growth of gazelles. So can you elaborate on that? Because I am telling you, South Korea is primarily an export-oriented country, like Japan. It is because you do not have a large domestic economy like India or like China. Okay, given that, I am surprised with this finding. What explains this? Does that mean that all these gazelles are primarily growing within the South Korean economy, or what is that? I'm a bit surprised with that result. Export growth did not explain, or did not turn out to be a significant factor for the growth of. Professor Lee, did you hear my question?
So you mean that the difference from the other countries you mean that the differences between among the Asian countries, right?
So if I'm right, Professor Seol, will you show me the last slide?
Last slide?
Yeah.
This is the big auditorium, not my notebook, and big auditorium, and I already sent my presentations to this.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Maybe, yeah. Professor Seol, fine. I will ask my question to Professor Fujiwara.
Yes.
Yeah. Professor
Yes.
Fujiwara, yeah.
Fujiwara.
Professor Fujiwara, go ahead.
Fujiwara, see, again, your study has brought several interesting findings. But do you have any policy prescription to the biotech startups to overcome the valley of death?
What? Say again.
Do you have any policy suggestion
Uh-huh.
to biotech startups on
Yes.
how to deal with the valley of death? How to deal with the valley of death?
Okay. Because especially that is sometimes very important. And recently, I just studied about another data for another papers. At times, some company is very interested in just using a debt instead of just equities. It depends on just a company strategy in the biotech. Okay. Especially the companies have their own very good brand names.
No, my question is this. You have a very strong government. Can government support help biotech startups to overcome the valley of death?
Sometimes government support as an early stage as the seed funds.
Okay.
Study, but usually no, we just depend on private money as a venture capital or just big companies is a partnership, like US? No. Oh, may I ask? May I ask? Okay, I have some question to three persons. Okay, may I ask? Did you finish your question?
Yes, yes, over.
Okay, so first is on Jess and second person, Professor Angelina.
Professor Angelina, yeah.
In case of the Malaysia, I had the on just on Bandung. One student came from Bandung Institute.
Yes, from Bandung, Institute Technology Bandung.
So I want to ask you, because in Malaysia, there are two major arrays. One is just Chinese and also Malaysia. So I had maybe yeah. Maybe it's just a sensitive question. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe the Chinese people, maybe Chinese people are much better as on business. Okay. Second is, and maybe the your country is Muslim, is a major religions. So in case of the just Muslim bank, how about the a VC type of investment? Is there any trouble of such a Muslim type of behavior?
Interesting. That could be my future study. But from my 2 cents of observation, so far I have not seen the race issue that comes into venture capitalists. So they will still want to look at a good product, a good idea, a good technology that is disruptive, and it is a scalable company. So that is still one of the main questions, you know, as we went into a couple of venture capitalists pitching. So it's quite interesting. The race does not actually came, it might not be a factor that I observe, but it is definitely worth a study given that we have more venture capitalists and more angel investors in the country now.
Okay. Okay, thanks so much. So I'll ask you on Korean professor, okay? And as a third person, in your presentation is a 2000 years, 2000. So at times at the page 11, okay, and maybe the startup company number is very huge. This rate is just IT bubble of the US. 2000 just company number it was very big compared to another years.
Which company do you mean?
No. And number of the increase, number of the emergency of just startup companies.
Yes, we have 설 교수님 먼저 말씀하시겠어요? 아니면 제가 조금 더 질문해도 될까요? Professor Fujiwara,
yes.
I'm not sure if I understand your question very clearly, but as my understanding, we have several startups or some technology venture companies in our country, but I'm not sure. But
okay,
there.
Maybe
we don't have too much companies in this decades, excluding several companies of Takao or Naver or Line, or it's a IT venture companies, and traditional conglomerates of Samsung, LG, and Hyundai or other ones, but not too much emerging companies. Extraordinary.
Okay.
Despite of the popular understanding on Korean government, Korean economies, but still our governments support to diverse startup companies to raise their revenues and incomes. But I'm not sure how many companies you can say in this session as following your questions.
Page 11, the 2000 years is very huge number of the startup. So I want to know the reason. Yeah. But second question is okay.
Yes.
How about the measurement of success? Because you said success or non-success. So what is the measurement of success?
Professor Seol?
Yeah, your presentations.
The
definition of the success.
The 4 diagrams.
Page 11.
If we choose the regression analysis, the trend line goes up, then we say growth. The trend line goes down is decrease. The trend line shows some instability, then we call it the force pattern.
Okay, thanks so much. This question also rated on Angelina, Prof. Angelina. So I want to know, of course, I can understand your university's very aggressive achievements, but I want to know what's the measurement of success in incubation of your universities?
That is very interesting because, like I say, we actually just started about less than a year. So we would want to look at the students, which are more entrepreneurial. We want to see there's an increase in terms of the entrepreneurship activity on campus. Yes. Students, to be either they are looking at starting out company, or they are thinking, they are behaving more entrepreneurial when they go into workplace, more innovative and more creative, so that they could contribute to the society as well.
Okay, thanks so much. So, Prof. Bala Subrahmanya, I want to ask you also.
To me?
Yeah, no, Bala Subrahmanya, India.
Professor Bala. Professor Bala.
Yes. Yes.
Please don't escape.
Yes, please.
Thanks so much, very interesting presentation. But I want to know what's the difference between the small SME and manufacturing also service industries, because maybe the difference. Of course.
No, see, when we say small and medium enterprises, it would include manufacturing SMEs and service sector SMEs.
Yeah. So maybe the damage is different.
So informal enterprises predominantly comprise service enterprises. They include even hawkers, that is street side sellers. They may be selling foods, they may be selling other manufactured products, or they may be providing services. And what has happened is, during the first wave, they all left the cities, urban cities. They went back to the rural areas. So in fact, such enterprises got wiped out completely. In fact, the other day when I was traveling in a Uber cab, I asked the driver, how did COVID-19 impact him? So instead of answering that question, he was telling me, sir, because of COVID-19, our city got cleaned up so well. He was telling. Of course, he didn't understand its implications, but he also told me, look, all these people, they have gone back to their respective native places and they have engaged in agriculture now. In other words, they deserted their agriculture land, came to cities in search of better employment, better income opportunities. But COVID-19 forced them to go back and cultivate their land. That could be one reason why agricultural growth was positive. And all these are mostly informal enterprises, I would say. Whereas formal enterprises, they have actually sheds or land and building. So they resorted to production process immediately after the lockdown was lifted. And of course, many of them suffered because of inadequate labor. So that prompted them to go for more, maybe in some cases automation, in some cases more capital intensive production. Such enterprises actually got back to business. Sorry.
I have another 2 questions. Okay.
Professor, we have only 5 minutes. So
1 minute.
We have 5 minutes. Okay.
1 minute.
Okay.
So, quick. I think, of course, SME is vulnerable compared to the big companies in financial situation, but maybe they can make separate from another group. But the gig companies are very difficult to make separate.
I agree.
So maybe I think SMEs are sometimes very strong compared to the big company. This is one point.
But
Another
sir,
is-
Professor
Another,
Fujiwara,
sorry, very short. How about the MMT, modern monetary theory, modern monetary theory, MMT?
that
Because
largely
if you have the big deficit, government, maybe the MMT series support, you can get a big deficit.
modern manufacturing. What did he say?
Government, national government.
Yeah, I did not understand your
National
question.
government gets the big deficit, can support the SME.
Mm.
Yeah.
Government did extend support to SMEs in a big way through its fiscal policy and monetary policy.
Yeah.
So, but that would have largely helped the organized sector and not the unorganized sector to a significant extent.
So my question is, how do you think MMT, modern monetary theories?
Modern manufacturing?
Yeah, are you agrees or not to the MMT, modern
Modern
monetary theory?
manufacturing technologies you are
No,
referring to?
modern monetary theory in finance. Oh, okay.
Modigliani theory, modern Modigliani theory.
Oh, you mean MMT, the definition of MMT, right?
Yeah. So even the government gets a big deficits. They can support. So do you agree or not?
I'm not familiar with that. I do not. I cannot answer.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I finish.
Thank you very much. And before we end this session, Professor Bala asked a question to Professor Seol or the other ones to tell the difference between the countries. So if I understood correctly, you asked the professors the differences between the countries to support the economic crisis or the ones, right? Just remember your last question to Professor Seol. You mean that the Korean extraordinary strategy to support the economic pandemics or the ones?
Yeah, here I'm referring to the sixth one. Export business positively matters in growth rate. Results. Nothing is shown in the under the result category.
So because the presentations doesn't show the clear result of the research, right?
It is in process, but
Okay, fine.
primary result is yes.
Accepted.
Yeah, primary result is yes, but we need more test.
Okay, fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Now it's time for us to wrap up this session, and it's my first time to be an online chair for the conference, so I did very many mistakes during the session. So
you are doing very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you
the
very
internet
much.
is not easy.
yeah. Online conference is not easy for me to have do as a chair. So thank you very much for your presenters, and it would be my great experience to have an online session. Thank you very much, and we will wrap up this session. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Professor Seol, Professor Fujiwara, Professor Angelina, Professor Lee. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.